Hello students, this is Dr. Faizan Mirza. We are discussing respiratory system, structure and function. Blood-gas interface. Blood-gas interface is formed when blood comes directly in contact with the capillaries which are present right outside the alveoli. Alveoli being single cell lining and the capillary being single cell lining as well allow a quick exchange to occur through this blood-gas interface. The diffusion which occurs of oxygen and of carbon dioxide down their respective gradients, which is that oxygen goes from the alveolar air into the blood and carbon dioxide moves from the blood to the alveolar air and is exhaled out, follows simple laws of diffusion, mainly Fick's law of diffusion. So what is Fick's law of diffusion? The Fick's law of diffusion states that the total gas that can move across any sheet of tissue is proportional to the area of that sheet of tissue but inversely proportional to its thickness. So the larger the area, the quicker the diffusion, and the greater the thickness, the slower the diffusion would be. This blood gas barrier is having an area of about 50 to 100 square meters. There are tiny blood vessels which wrap around the air sacs or the alveoli. There are about 500 million alveoli. This is just a fact that you need to keep in mind. The total surface area for all the alveoli combined is about 85 square meters, which is a huge area. But the volume is only about 4 liters. So this enormous area of this respiratory exchange is constituted by just 4 liters of volume. This increases the rate at which blood gas interface allow exchange to occur. When we're discussing airflow, we know that airflow through the airways, and the airways are either conducting airways or the respiratory zone, which we'll come to later. Conducting airways are those larger proximal airways through which air passes and reach the region which is alveoli eventually, so gas exchange can occur. The conducting airways do not allow any exchange to occur because they do not have a lot of blood vessels where exchange can occur, and the tissue thickness is so much that efficient diffusion cannot occur. So these conducting airways, which mainly are the proximal airways, they have a lot of cartilage in the walls, and as the airway proceed or progress along the respiratory tree, we see that the cartilage thickness keeps decreasing and smooth muscle thickness increases. As we go away, we see that most of the airways are then composed mainly of smooth muscles and cartilage is absent altogether, and eventually the alveoli will be reached where exchange can occur. The conducting airways, since they do not have alveoli, but they do have ventilation, but since the blood flow is not there, so exchange cannot occur. So this accounts for anatomic dead space. The idea of dead space is mainly that here exchange is not occurring and the anatomical dead space volume is about 150 ml. In the bronchioles, we have terminal bronchioles where the bronchioles terminate and they divide to form respiratory bronchioles. Every respiratory bronchiole will not have an alveoli or the sac where a gas interface, or you can say blood gas interface, will be present, but occasionally in respiratory bronchioles there will be a bunch of airways or bunch of air sacs where the alveoli is there and gas exchange can occur. The alveolated region where exchange is occurring between blood and gas, this is called as respiratory zone, and this is always distal to the terminal bronchiole and forms an anatomical unit called sinus. During inspiration, the diaphragm pushes down and the ribs are raised upwards and outwards due to the contraction of the intercostal muscles. This is an active process. This needs energy. So due to the contraction of these muscles, the ribs and sternum are raised upward and outwards. The diaphragm is pushed downwards. This increases the diameter or in the region of anatomical space present in the thoracic cavity, and this increase in the volume of thoracic cavity lowers the pressure, and when the pressure is lowered, the lungs can expand and air goes into the lungs. Reverse happens during exhalation. that the diaphragm relaxes, it pushes the lungs from bottom side, or you can say from the lower side, and the sternum and the rib cage, they gets lowered, and the lungs, they exhale out the gases. The blood gas interface is extremely thin, about only 0.2 to 0.3 micrometers. There's an enormous surface area of about 50 to 100 meters squared. Large areas obtained by halving about 500 million alveoli. It's because it's not just one unit, it is divided into 500 million alveoli in both lungs. This blood gas interface is so thin that large increases in capillary pressure can damage the barrier. So the capillary pressure, which we'll discuss later, plays an important role in determining that whether the person will end up suffering from edema, for example, where blood comes, the blood ends up, blood pressure allows the fluids to leak out into the lungs, and the person ends up suffering from pneumonia. When we're discussing respiratory membrane, it's the gas exchange, is where the gas exchange will occur. We know that your alveoli and your capillary are present right adjacent one another, and the blood that's flowing in this across this capillary will take about 3/4 second for the diffusion to occur. So when the blood arrives here and by the time it leaves here, there is about just 0.75 seconds time across which this diffusion will occur. This is the arterial end of the capillary, this is the venule end of the capillary, and this is the alveoli. So when the blood, you can see the capillary blood, you can see red blood cells and plasma as well. Carbon dioxide comes in blood and oxygen is there in the alveolar air. Exchange will occur. When exchange occurs, so this exchange occurs through the single cell lining of the alveoli as well as the single cell lining of the blood vessels, the blood capillary. This is a very thin distance across which this diffusion needs to occur, and this is highly efficient. Both the gases diffuse down their gradient. Oxygen comes into blood, the blood becomes oxygenated, and carbon dioxide goes into the alveolar air to be exhaled out. Your alveoli is having a protein called elastin, which allows the alveoli to expand and recoil during inhalation and exhalation. So during exhalation, the alveoli is recoiled with the elastic fibers, they pull together, whereas in inhalation it expands. So the stretching of alveoli occurs to allow inhalation, and in deflation the alveoli becomes they reduce their size and their volume. It's because of the protein elastin. So this is how this is stretching and recoiling helps in functioning of the alveoli, and the elastin protein works by allowing elasticity to be maintained. This region is the respiratory membrane. The respiratory membrane is the region that will allow gas exchange to occur. It's about 0.5 micrometer to 0.6 micrometer. You know that the blood capillary is about 7 micrometer long. So this is how squamous epithelial lining of the alveoli would allow the gas exchange to occur. Basement membranes are present across the single cell lining, so they will also be there, but they will not be providing any kind of substantial barrier for diffusion to have any difficulty crossing in either direction. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.